Okay, back again. This is where he was talking to the stranger about the child in the other village. This interested him very much because the child was supposed to be wonderful in many ways. She could describe her visions and tell many interesting things. I said I had just left the child and that I had told him the story about the child and why she could see visions. I said, many can see visions upon the earth, but a great number do not tell others of their visions for fear that the many would not understand and think them strange. Then I proceeded to tell him that this child was not afflicted biologically, but that she would take on conditions belonging to those from a plane of consciousness in the astral world. This would be especially true when a person would be in the child's presence to receive a message from an individual in the astral world. Then the conditions that had freed that person from the physical body would temporarily take over the child so that the one who had come back could be identified. After I had explained to him about the child, he was thus satisfied, and he bade me farewell and went on his way. I learned later that this man had gone to the little girl and was able to make contact with a very blessed one whom he loved very, very much, a very wonderful loved one, and this pleased the man so greatly. The rest of my journey was uneventful. I did not pass anyone other than the one that I referred to, and I soon arrived at my destination, where I then joined with the many who had been awaiting my arrival. Since I had broken bread and had partaken from the stranger's vessel to quench my thirst, I was not depleted, but I was still greeted with the same when I arrived, and soon I was replenished quite satisfactorily. I then told the group about the man I had met and broken bread with. I described the illumination that I had seen as he gazed unto me rather oddly, and it was reasonable to understand that he too had blended his force with mine. There was first a friendly attitude, the breaking of bread, and then there was the intention to help the little girl, whom he thought in his own mind he could help. Now then, this story might help you to understand that everything in life is in order. You come to serve humanity. You come to suffer, it seems. But as you suffer upon this earth, you are all the more compassionate, and you have love for those near, and you have love for the world. Somehow you have the correct understanding of love, universally. Yes, you hear people say today that God is love, and God is truly love, but love is also understanding. Love is something that you do not turn on and off, but at a moment's notice, no indeed. And I say unto each and every one that you too may meet many as you tread your rough path of life, and you may invite them to break bread with you, and you may help them to quench their thirst. This which is symbolical in character may come to pass, and as you do, you must remember that as you give forth light, so shall there be light shed upon you. You shall know the way, because the you, the I within, is the God Self. And when you go within to understand the purpose of life, the why, that you are here, and the where, that you are going, then you shall truly know the peace that passeth understanding. That's very nice. Now, the shepherds. Now I would like to tell you the story of the shepherds. We would often see the flock on the hillside. Of course, I realize, excuse me interrupting, but you can get this book for yourself and read it. You don't need me to read it. And you certainly don't need to watch me on a camera. You can just close your eyes and listen. But still, obviously, whoever's watching, I don't think there's many. But as long as someone's watching, I'll keep reading. Incidentally, I asked my teacher once, in another life, had I lived at the time of Jesus? Or he said, yes, you lived in that part of the world at the time that Jesus lived. I said, oh, did I ever meet him? said, no, but your eyes met once, whatever that means. So, no way to prove that, but it's interesting. Okay, I hope I wasn't one of the ones putting him to death or something. Now, I would like to tell you the story of the shepherds. We would often see the flock on the hillside, and then not very far away would be the shepherd. Perhaps he would be resting under a tree, and sometimes he would remain there for a long time because the flock would stay in the same location for many hours, and sometimes seemingly for days. Yes, as I look back and see the shepherd on the hillside watching over his flock, I can see that very often he is in a state of meditation. And as he sits there, he is looking out into the space. Perhaps everything is very still within him. Yes, it has become so. It seems that he has become, as it has often been said even in your life today, as quiet as a little lamb. Now this, of course, is merely a statement that is made today, but as we drift back to the earliest stages of our lives on earth, this became a very important feature among men. It was always said of the shepherd that he had gone out with his flock and that he was able to meditate. It was the shepherd then who later became very much attuned to the infinite state, because his occupation gave him time to think, to meditate, and to attune himself to the universe. And by doing so he communicated. Yes, how well I do not know that. But the shepherd was able to communicate with his higher self because he communicated with nature. And by communicating with nature, he was communicating with God. It's funny, I was just listening on a public radio station about John Muir, the Scottish immigrant to this country who became a great naturalist in California. And he'd had a traditional religious upbringing, but he found God in nature that way. And it makes a lot of sense. Not in a building, but out in the open spaces. The shepherds of the past were truly infinitely attuned to the divine state, for they were godly men, learned men in their day, and I might add in every sense of the word, they carried out their activity merely to be, as I say, close to nature. When I was just a mere boy, I can recall meeting the shepherd, and the shepherd told me many things. He told me things that would come to pass, and he told me of the sorrows of men. He told me that the land would be confiscated along with other things which would also be taken away from mankind. Yes, the shepherds were very wise men in those days. They were men who returned for a special purpose. Perhaps we will call them men of destiny, if you wish. They knew the laws that governed men, and they became ever so attuned to the infinite state. They knew of their mission in life, and special missions to be performed from time to time. It has often been said that while the flock was busying itself with the grazing, the shepherds were known to go into the nearby village and sometimes do wonderful things for humanity. And then they would say, "It is not I as an individual who doeth the work, but it is the godly consciousness within that doeth the work." But this was true with all men who become godly, divinely attuned to the infinite state. And so it is, and so it was that they went forth and did much. I recall the time when one of the shepherds had come unto the village nearby was his flock. He asked to take a drink of water from the well, and then he was granted the privilege, of course. But to the shepherds little things were always a privilege, not because they were so denied, but because they were grateful for everything. They were very, very humble indeed. After his thirst had been quenched on this particular occasion, the shepherd then spoke unto one whom I knew very well. I can recall that as he spoke unto this wonderful lady, he then told her many things, and he looked at her and he said, "I believe I know you. I believe our paths have crossed before." She smiled and answered, "Yes, I believe so too." Then the shepherd went on to say many things unto this blessed woman, and he told her of the trying days, and he told her of the future. He then thanked her again for the water from the well, and then with gladdened eyes and with a smile on his face he turned aside after blessing her, and then returned to his flock. Now, I've lost track of time here. I can't remember. To be on the safe side, I better cut off and continue in a minute.